Hello and welcome to another episode of Father and Joe. I am Joe Rockey here with Father Boniface Hicks. And Father, depending upon when you listen to this episode, over the course of the winter, we had this thing called Snowmageddon that inflicted much of the country here. And I was out there shoveling like the rest of us, getting the sidewalks clean and passable so that people can walk their dogs and all that fun stuff. And it took me back to a thought that we had in a very early episode we did, which was the same scenario of I put all of this work and energy in cleaning out a spot for when my wife came home, she'd be able to open the door, not have to walk through any of the snow, etc. And someone else just came in and took the spot literally right in front of my house that literally since that moment no one has ever taken. Um, but but nonetheless, I remember having that thought upon me, and basically conversations. It was when we were very new in this, and learning each other to a sense, and going through that experience and going through it now, years later, and seeing within me these differences of how those memories and thoughts and how my mind has shifted embracing the faith and having these great conversations with you. And as I guess life would have it, another anger or another issue that would test my anger, I guess is a way to say it, came upon me later in life. And if it's all right with you, I'd like to talk that out, because there's moments and times when people get angry about stuff and they make decisions, and that's ultimately what I did in this. And I wanted to see if we could basically analyze if what I did was a good idea or not, because it was a big decision. There's no way around it, but it was a decision that I made. So if you're all right with that for today's episode, I can tell you a tale and we can go from there and see if it was good or not.
Well, let me say first, Joe, I remember that conversation very well, and I just appreciate your openness so much. I remember trying to be as gentle, but also forthright for the sake of our listeners to kind of hold that up, and you received that so well, and I'm just really touched that that came back. You remember that, and can see, but again, it's what I have affirmed about you all along is your real sincere desire to grow in the faith, your real openness to hear, and then the very steady. You don't just kind of like snap to attention and execute everything. You take it in, and then you steadily apply it, and you wrestle with it, and you understand it, and this is precisely the way. Like, what's our goal? Our goal, all of us, is to try to internalize the divine logic, to take God into ourselves in that sense, so that the way that we live looks more like Him. And that looks crucified ultimately. I mean, that is an unimaginably high standard.
Mhm.
And so, how do we do that? Well, a little bit at a time, and as you were ready to kind of receive that lesson and start to integrate it, and so many others, and I'm doing the same thing. A lot of what I'm saying is this stuff I've had to kind of discover and try to implement in my own life. And so anyway, I love being on the journey with you. I love that episode, and I remember that very well. I love how you received all of that. And so anyway, yep, just happy to hear another tale.
Yeah, so I have changed that outcome before and hasn't come up since then. I've shoveled snow plenty of times, but I haven't had that anger flash there. Um, so we, I do many things for a profession, not the least of which is we're a consultancy firm to help other businesses succeed with the ultimate goal of making the business desirable for someone else, so that when you decide to retire, your business doesn't turn off. That's, if we're paraphrasing the goal, that's what we do. We do it in a lot of different fun ways. So, number of years ago, at least four, I took on a client that, quite frankly, had I never intervened, the internet would have killed this business line. They figured out how to do it for basically free, and what he was selling would not exist. So it was a lot of re-looking at how we do the business and really kind of having his baby that was decades old, his complete control, gently telling him, you're kind of doing it wrong. We got to do it differently. And on a personality level, he had that ability to be passionate, have anger flare-ups from here to there and all that. And we went through this journey, lots of time, energy, and potential money invested in him with virtually no return. The big payout was going to come out when we had the success of it. And that was the mentality going into this was going to be a long-term project. And we got everything lined up. We got a new market that was going to digest and love this business, love this product. We enhanced the product in two significant ways that the internet couldn't replace it for free. Made a lot of important business-like decisions to do that. And we had the in to get into the community that was going to be the purchasers with a very strong in, someone who already sells to this community. And really, we were going to have it essentially handed to us. And literally, we build this up to where that person says, hey, here's the first two people. I just want you to clean up two little things on this form. Not a big deal. So I get that email from the, we'll call it supplier, referrer, the morning of the Super Bowl. And as I was driving into where our Super Bowl party was with my family in the car, obviously, I pick up the phone, and that partner is just completely irate, swearing like crazy, going nuts, only seeing the little thing that need cleaned up and not the greater success that we're about to enter into this great opportunity, and everything we've been working for 4 years is about to stand through. Almost like in a, not to say this is the same biblical example, but that moment whenever Moses got to see the Holy Land, like that was basically the business equivalent of what the email we got was. But the way that he acted, knowing that my wife and kids were on the phone, I came to the conclusion that I never want to make this guy a cent. And the following day, I told him I'm firing him as a client. After doing all of the work and all the time and energy to get to that point, just because I came to the conclusion that you weren't worth it. And that's not an easy decision to take. I mean, there was a massive economic payoff of riding through and accepting, I guess, what the church term would be an injustice. But I opted not to for all the reasons I just outlaid. And, in the moment, there's a little bit of, you feel good, you stood up for yourself. But then there's also the reality of, yeah, it's great that I defended everyone's honor, but I still need to provide. So at the end of the day, that was a major plan for the future economic providing outcome here. So there's the adrenaline dying down, thinking about this through and weighing with this decision. And that's essentially what I want to talk about, because this, while any person might have a version of a very hard decision they had to make that they think they did it for the right reasons, there still are impacts from having invested a lot of time, money, and energy into what effectively is a relationship and not going to get anything out of it. So that's what I wanted to bring up as a conversation point. Obviously, I kept it a little bit vague just for sake, but if I need to dive deeper into details, I certainly will, to make this a meaningful conversation for both you and the audience.
And let me make sure I got the players in the right places. So the agreement with the client had a bit of messiness that made your business partner really irate?
No. If we go to the actual thing, it was messed up. It was a form that my company created that basically needed 2 sentences readjusted. At the end of the day, it was not a catastrophic, unfixable circumstance.
I see. But it was that irateness that made you decide not to go forward with the client?
Yeah. Yeah, and yeah, it was my partner's or the client's, not my like both, I guess. Attitude where I came to the decision that I never want to make you a cent. I never want to make you another cent, and that was the decision. So, yes, yeah, it was the direct partner's attitude in response to a incredibly light critique.
Yeah, well, I certainly appreciate your unwillingness to tolerate certain kinds of behavior, and that says a lot. And the cost to you, being significant, as you said, that there were the opportunity was great. Tolerating that kind of outburst would have been, you know, whatever, a price to pay, but in a different way, you might have you might have decided that's a small price to pay. But it's something that I it landed with me the first time in hearing it from Jordan Peterson. But he's like, if you put up with things, then that's on you. And
Yeah.
it's, if there's something that's wrong, then it's better to stand against it and assert it as wrong. And if you remember, his whole start in the massive public square was standing up against I think it was the laws that were enforcing some of the pronouns, something like that. And he was very clear, like, not opposed to, the whole transgender issue is another question. The value of pronouns is another question. The thing that was intolerable was the legal enforcement of it. And if you can pass laws like that, then you can pass laws to do a lot of other things. And if you don't stand against them, the frog in boiling water kind of analogy, that even if you think it's relatively small, you're accepting the heat being raised, and then it's going to get raised again and again and again. And what's the point at which you're going to stand against it? And I think those are some of the hardest decisions. I mean, it's what is worth canceling something for? What is worth the sort of nuclear option? What is worth drawing a boundary and holding to that? And it's a big judgment call. And I really admire you for making that, and really appreciate the decision to not tolerate that particular behavior. So.
Well, I thank you for that. And it's one of these things that literally, just behind the curtains, it happened on Monday of this week that we're recording this, when the decision was made. So very fresh in the aftermath here. And, this wasn't something that came into my decision in the moment. My moment was, this is just, we're not doing this. And the immediate actions in the moment before I made that decision were, well, I'm going to fix what I can on the mobile phone, because obviously I'm at a Super Bowl party. I'm not at my desk. So I'll fix what I can right now. And then, which cleaned up probably 90% of it. And then the other 10%, I just have to be at the office for the apps that were involved to finalize everything, right? Just one of those processes. And I did that first thing in the morning as soon as I woke up, like, that's the responsibility. If it were no other involvement, him not saying it, I would have done the exact same things. I would have cleaned it up and fixed it, and we all would be happy and probably on sales calls right now. But there was this, and I did that super early in the morning, like very first thing at the desk, and there was this feeling just hovering all over me, like, that was wrong. Why did you fix this for them? And that was really when it started settling in. Like, do you realize what your kids and wife just experienced because of this? And this feeling, and again, I don't know how to describe it as other than it was a feeling of, it doesn't matter what I make from it, it's going to feel dirty. And yes, that doesn't make the product wrong. That doesn't make the service that we were going to provide wrong. In fact, I believe it's actually pure and would have been very helpful for people. But the people involved made me feel that the benefit that I would receive would have been tainted. And I don't know if that, I know economically that makes no sense. Like every single form of my accounting and economic training says that is stupid. Like that's not a variable you should consider. But it is something that I deeply did consider. And like I said, that's ultimately what led to the conclusion that I stated there. And I don't know if that's something that we can dive in, but that was one of the things that kind of drove it here. Is I know we're coming to the end of the episode, and this is one of the few ones where I talked more than you. I'd like to try to wrap that up and change that around here at the end, but that was certainly a feeling that I had that kind of, this is it, do it. And yeah, so like I said, Father, I want to give you a chance to
Yeah, no, I
conclude this
appreciate that.
episode.
And I'm glad this was your episode in a sense that it's really an applied lesson that you're sharing with us, a hard decision. And we can contrast it if it were a matter of a moral absolute, if he wanted you to steal or lie or something else, obviously that's a different category. This is a matter of prudential judgment around certain kinds of behaviors, um, and you made that judgment, trying to weigh some options, and then ultimately making a decision in a place. It's always interesting to hear how people describe that sense of then I knew that was the right thing, or sometimes we talk about an interior peace. uh, I always like to keep an eye on St. Ignatius's qualities for spiritual consolation. Uh, he describes more intense ones like heart uplifted, inflamed with love above all creatures. There's a way we can be sort of transported. Sometimes spiritual joy, sometimes moved to tears, but an increase in faith, an increase in hope, and then having our heart placed at peace and quiet. And I think that's something that comes through for a lot of people. It just sort of like lands. I'll show
And
you.
I
I keep
definitely
this
felt
on.
that. Like when I came to the conclusion Monday afternoon before I put it into and basically had a lawyer review what I was going to say to make sure it was officially ending it. Like there's no kinda. Um, it was pretty much when I sent it to him and said, "This is what I want to do." That calm and peace came over me. And then they're lawyers; they got to do their thing. But that was I had that feeling. Yeah, the calmness and peace as
Mm-hmm.
snow settling in a snow globe.
Yeah. So my snow globe analogy, it's like, normally you have to sort of hold it still and slowly the snow comes to rest. But sometimes it's like all of the snow suddenly comes to rest. That's a spiritual consolation. That's something, that's a grace that God is giving us, and noticing that, like, suddenly all of the chaos, the static, the snow inside of me, it just sort of lands. And this is the step to take. And sometimes that happens kind of in the process of even taking the step. So that's where sometimes we have enough light to take the next step, and as we're taking the step, it all kind of lands, comes into clarity. So that the God does seem to help us make those hard decisions at times with those special graces. But anyway, I appreciate you sharing all that, and certainly we'll pray that the risk that you took for, I think, very good reason, pays out in the sense of providing for your family, and is still the Lord provides for you in the midst of it.
Yeah, and from my standpoint, I go back to that day when I threw that snow on that other person's car. During the moment of the outlash, I didn't fight back at all. Like in terms of anger regulation and stuff like that. And Father, I directly appreciate to you, because had I done that, it obviously would be a much different situation. So I thank you for being with me all this journey and seeing some of my lower and potentially higher moments along the way. And I thank you for everything that you've done, and for the audience as well.